Have you ever tried to get somebody into reading manga who has never really done it before? Do you have a friend that you know would absolutely love a particular story if they'd read it, but you know that they're never going to read it because it's a manga? Getting into manga is actually a lot harder than it seems, and I know that seems weird because in our little bubble of like anime manga fans, obviously it's just something we do. It's something we enjoy. We look for the next best story. We look for the next best character journey that we can go on to experience new things and go to new worlds and find new adventures and learn life lessons and all of these things, or just see some nice anime titties. Whatever the reason it is that you read manga, it's there and you enjoy it and you're part of that world. But I have found that the stigma around anime and manga still hasn't really gone away. The fact that you see drawings, the fact that they're, cartoon images, animation, people normally think that they're geared towards children or younger people. And of course, some of the most popular anime and manga that exist are kind of a little bit more shonen, generalized for the younger crowds. And that's not to say that adults and people older can't enjoy them too, but ones that are really popular, like My Hero Academia is super popular right now. And, when I was growing up, it was Dragon Ball and Naruto. And those are all great series, but they are sort of more designed for people, let's say, from like 12 to 18 range. That's like your prime demographic for that style of shonen. Doesn't mean that they can't be enjoyed by older people, but that's just sort of like the generalized look at it. And since those manga and anime are so wildly popular, it still persists today that most people believe that this stuff is either for that younger generation or is the kind of crazy hentai, weird, disgusting stuff that they want to cancel outright and think people are cringy and awful and disgusting for even wanting to read it. And I don't know what the hell they're talking about when they say that stuff. Like, what cringy and perverted? Where does that come from? But as we grow, learn, and realize, and as we get into fiction more as we get older as adults, you find that there are stories that aren't just within the novel format. There are stories that aren't just Catcher in the Rye and The Great Gatsby and the novels that they wanted us to read when we were in school. They say that this is great writing, this is what great writing is all about, this is great storytelling. All that is definitely true. Iliad, the Odyssey, all of those kind of classic stuff. But I suggest that there are particular manga out there that reach these levels and perhaps even exceed them, but they will always have this barrier around them simply because they are drawings, they are comics, they are attributed to art and animation that is geared towards children, and it's a stigma that is always going to stay there. And it's slowly kind of dissipating away, but I don't believe it will ever quite get to the level. I don't think we will ever quite get to the level where like a English professor is going to say Berserk is on the same level as The Lord of the Rings, which I do believe it is, but it's kind of hard to say that, right? It's kind of hard to say that because you just don't get that same kind of social understanding of great storytelling when there's comic pages and images involved and, battle scenes and tits and things like that are thrown into the mix that seem to be just kind of sensationalized to the point where that's the only quality that it's good for. So it's not necessarily about trying to convince somebody that these stories can be just as good as classic novels that we've read in our past or in our college English courses or whatever the case may be. I think it's just a matter of getting people to be open enough to check out a different medium that exists, because that's all that manga is. It's just a different medium. It's just the same thing as whether you're writing a book or making a movie or making a television series, or even storytelling in video games has really, really gone up, in quality over the last decade or so. It is just another medium in order to tell a story. And when you're looking at the hard work and dedication that these authors put into the story, especially with manga, where a lot of them are writing the story and drawing the artwork themselves. So it's not just being a great writer and being great at writing dialogue. You actually have to make the images and panels flow in a way that you could actually read this and enjoy it as a comic. And that means leading up to splash pages. That means leading up to a dramatic page turn reveal. That means leading up to, something really incredible within the pages. So you're not just writing the story and writing the dialogue and making it feel real and natural and lived in and expanding the world and doing the development of the characters, but then you also have to do it in a way where it's presented not just through words, but now you're paneling things in a way that makes it engaging to the eye. And so when you make that page turn and you see Guts, swinging a sword against the trolls and stuff, it makes that much bigger of an impact because of that. And that is something incredibly difficult to do that I don't think gets as much praise as it needs to. So if you're trying to get somebody into reading manga, there are so many different layers of difficulty in order to do it. I would say, I think people have to come to it on their own, but I also would say to open their eyes to the fact that they could be missing out on some really incredible stories along the way, stuff that I know for a fact people would love if they actually gave it a chance. So take one of my favorite manga of all time, Vinland Saga, which just looks amazing on the shelf in the hardcovers, right? So Vinland Saga is one of my favorite manga of all time. It's one of my favorite stories of all time. It's absolutely incredible. I still think to this day it's slept on enough. I mean, it's known like within the manga community. People know about it, people like it, people enjoy it, but it's not talked about enough to the extent of quality which I think it is. And there are like a certain subset of people that have recognized it and are trying to spread the word, but it's really hard to get people into because number one, there's only one season of the anime and it's kind of hard to find. It's hard to find in dub. That's a whole other thing. We'll get into that in a second. So it's kind of hard to find, but there's only one season out so far and there's a lot more manga than there is anime. So first you have to bridge the gap of people that would be willing to maybe check out the anime, but also to remind them that, hey, the anime only covers up to book 4. There's about 12 to 13 books so far, so it's only a really small portion of the story. Then, if they actually decide that they want to watch the anime, then they have to be okay with animation, but then they got to decide whether they want to watch it in sub or dub. And of course, if you go online, people are always going to bitch and complain and argue with each other about what's better, sub or dub. Then only that, if they do choose to watch the dub, there's 2 different English dubs. Where do they find them? God only knows. So that's out there already difficult enough to get into and having to deal with that. So if they do have to watch it in Japanese with the subtitles, most normal people that don't watch a ton of anime aren't really used to doing that. So that's even a little bit more of a difficult barrier for them to climb to even be able to watch Vinland Saga. Then if they want to know the full story or if they want to read it in its like authentic manga form, they have to be willing to read the manga. In order to do that, you either have to find it online or you have to buy it or borrow it from a friend. I don't let people borrow my shit though. I'm paranoid about that. I hate gaps on the shelf. That would just piss me off. I got like OCD. That's a whole other problem. But then they get their manga copy of Vinland Saga and they're like, all right, well, I guess I'll start reading this. And of course, they're going to try to read it this way, which would be backwards. So, not only do they have to cross the barrier into being willing to read manga, but then once they do, they have to learn how to read manga. So you can't just open it up and start reading it like a normal book. No, you got to open it up from the other direction because it's kept in its like authentic Japanese form or whatever. Then you have to read from right to left, which goes against everything that people in the West were taught because we all read left to right. And that's just the way that we've always done it. And so now you're teaching people how to specifically read the panels, and they have to go through this whole learning course of what to do before they can even begin to enjoy the story. And it's just like, it's a really hard thing for people to get over to begin with, because most people don't like to read in general. Then you decide, okay, I'm going to give manga a chance. Then you have to find the manga, and then you have to learn how to read the manga correctly. All of this just to enjoy a story. And the thing is, especially with Vinland Saga specifically, there are a ton of people I know that would love this series. There are people I know that watched Game of Thrones, that watched Breaking Bad, that watched a bunch of these amazing shows, that would totally love and adore the storyline of Vinland Saga and where it goes and where it takes its characters and how it evolves Thorfinn as a person. And it would be some of the greatest storytelling that they could experience. But there's so much of a wall of enjoying manga that it stops a lot of people from even getting to start. And there's also this final barrier that I want to talk about also, which is in the form of gatekeeping. Where, for some reason, especially in the anime manga community, there is a subset of people that are so hardcore about their love for something that they make it even more difficult for people to get into it. There are some people out there that think you can only enjoy something one particular way. Like there are some people out there that think you can only enjoy just straight up manga and that all the anime is trash. And there's some people that love the anime, but if you watch it in dub, then you suck. And there are some people that just don't want you to get into it because they want it all to themselves. There are some people that will just quiz you on every little detail about the series, and if you can't answer one question, they won't consider you a real fan or take anything that you have to say seriously. Or there's some people that believe so strongly in particular theories and particular series that they refuse to listen to anybody else's explanations of it or allow people their own interpretations of the story. I've always said, and I've said this in my videos before, one of my favorite quotes of all time is, one book read by 100 different people is 100 different books. Because we all come into reading fictional stories with our own life experiences, our own views on life, and everything that we've gone through, and we pick up different things based upon our experience. This is also why I love one of the episodes of South Park that is my favorite. It's called The Tale of Scrody McBoogerballs, which is this episode where Butters writes this book where he tries to write basically the most disgusting, fucked up thing you could possibly imagine about people just like shitting and puking over each other. And people read the book, and what he was trying to do was gross people out and make people hate it, but people found resonance and meaning within it, And it's just one of those things where it's like people can find meaning in anything. It's possible. So it's not even necessarily what the author intended, it's what you get out of it. And that being the case, I do think that fiction and fictional stories are incredibly important because they do more than just provide us entertainment for a short amount of time. They can stick with us, they can leave an impression in our heart, they can inspire us, they can motivate us, they can teach us things about life. There are stories like Vinland Saga and Berserk and Attack on Titan and many, many more. My manga collection isn't that big. I have 2 shelves and then I have comics and books over here, so working on it. But there are so many lessons and important things that I learned from manga. And I don't care how cheesy it sounds or how stupid it sounds, but there are things about different stories that I've read that have literally changed my life. And I find it upsetting. There are so many people out there that I know would love this shit if they were willing to give it a chance. But there's a lot of barriers, a lot of obstacles to even get to that point. People have to have the time to read it, people have to learn how to read it, people have to find the material. There's a lot. Sorry, my battery died. I can't quite remember where I was in my rant, but basically what I wanted to say was that it's because of you guys and my audience that I have so many great manga recommendations as time goes on that I'm able to discover more of these great stories, and it wouldn't have been like that if you guys hadn't been so inviting about it. So I think that the best thing that we could do, I know that we really want our niche, our anime or manga to be respected the same way that other great stories are respected. I want Berserk to be respected the same way Lord of the Rings is respected. But a lot of that has to do with a great adaptation too, which Lord of the Rings had and Berserk doesn't really. So there is that. But I do want to say that being more open and inclusive and allowing people to come into the gates of manga and discover it and go on that journey for themselves is, I think, the best thing that you can do to eventually try to make that happen. If you guys hadn't been so warm and inviting with me and recommended me all these great things, that would suck. I would have missed out on so much. So if there's people that that are into great fictional stories and they love long-term storytelling and, instead of binging a season on Netflix, maybe just start a manga series, start something, just try it out. Just take a recommendation from one of your friends that's really into it and see what they have to say, and then just give it a try, man. Go on the journey a little bit. But the only way that we get people to do that is if we're inclusive about it. So let me know what you guys think, and also what I would really like you to put down in the comments is what opened you up to being willing to check out manga? Were you always into it since you were a little kid? Did you just get into it like me? Like Dragon Ball was my first manga because Dragon Ball Z was one of my first anime, so it was the first time I read manga without even knowing it was manga, you know what I mean? So how did you get into it? Or I guess maybe a better question would be, what is the manga that made you a manga fan? The manga that you read where you were like, this is something I fucking love and adore. So what manga was that for you? For me, that was actually, I would say, Rurouni Kenshin. Rurouni Kenshin was my manga. It was my favorite manga before I read Berserk. It really shaped a lot of my teenage years. I fell in love with that. I adored it. I love the story. I love the characters. It inspired me. It motivated me. So many different things that manga just changed me in many, many ways. So What was that manga for you? Put that down in the comments. Also, like this video if you enjoyed it. And if you want to, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to try to hit 100K subs this year, kind of have a big pizza party for everybody where I promise I won't sacrifice anyone for greater power, because why would I do that? So if you want to help me get there, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you're notified when any video uploads. What am I talking about? I don't know. This is what happens when you rant off the cuff. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching this. I'll talk to you next time.